welcome. You're watching NewsX and I'm Megha Sharma. The US President Donald Trump has signed yet another executive order imposing sanctions on the International Criminal Court over its investigation on Israel. The ICC has issued an arrest warrant against Netanyahu for alleged war crimes related to Israel's actions in Gaza. Donald Trump has vowed to impose sanctions on anyone aiding ICC's investigations as well. The ICC has asked its member states to stand up against these sanctions. Meanwhile, the US government's international relief arm is in trouble after its funding to George Soros-led organizations, terrorists and media networks have now been made public. As per the reports, the USAID funded the Falah-e-Insaniyat Foundation, which is a front of Lashkar-e-Taiba in Pakistan. Lashkar is the outfit led by Hafiz Saeed, which planned and executed the 26/11 terror attacks in India. Let's start our conversation. I'm going to get in Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor. Ambassador Kapoor, I'm going to... Okay, before I go to Ambassador Pradeep, I have with me Gautam Mukherjee. Gautam, it's interesting to note and quite the cacophony that has been created by Donald Trump with his, outlandish remarks, which are definitely effective. Some of them would call them to be bombastic, but the issues that he has picked up, from immigration, tariffs, sanctioning International Criminal Court, withdrawing from the WHO, cutting USAID, downsizing the USAID staff, appealing to Saudi Arabia to reduce oil prices in a bid to end the war between Ukraine and Russia. Then of course his drill baby drill policy, naming Gulf of America, reclaiming Greenland, wanting to make Gaza Strip the Riviera of the Middle East. These announcements, executive orders, appeals that he makes to the people of America and to the rest of the world make headlines. But more particularly about what has happened, where he has sanctioned, he has had the gumption. I don't think any country in the world or any member state of the ICC has been able to make such a strong decision to just sanction the ICC and sanction any of the members of the ICC or their families to step foot in America ever in their lives.
Well, I think he's determined to get most of his agenda done in the first 2 years. Now, not everything he does is going to go through. A lot of it, for example, the birthright issue, which he banned, has been blocked by the courts. Many of the others will be opposed by various forces. However, he is getting results at a fantastic pace. Mexico is cooperating with some of his demands. Canada is cooperating with some of his demands. China has put counter tariffs, but is coming to a summit meeting very soon to try and negotiate its way out of further sanctions. Gaza, well, he's put, forget the exchange of hostages and the question of whether the battle was going to continue. Now he's put the cat amongst the pigeons by more or less annexing Gaza or suggesting it in a different kind of way. Now, this is going to make everybody come to the table to try and get a viable solution. Sanctioning the international court is probably a wise thing to do because one, they don't have any fiat to enforce. Second, they have been more and more partisan as the time goes on, and they needed a jolt. USAID has been misused. Some people call it a method of laundering money. There's all this controversy about kickbacks and condom money being used for all kinds of things apart from birth control. It goes on and on. I think he's got the immigration policy has kicked off. Of course, if you look at the dimensions of illegals in America as you do in India. Now, for example, we've had 104 people come back, the opposition making a hue and cry. There are 7 million illegal Indians in America. I can't see them coming back. Perhaps there was an editorial today which said that perhaps 20,000 at the most, can come back in this manner. So a lot of it is shock and awe and designed to shake the place up, use the power of the United States and the presidency to make a difference. I'm waiting for him to start sanctioning the Europeans, start sanctioning NATO. It's going to be a fun match.
That's interesting, and those figures on my screens are going to be very relevant in the next question that I asked to Pathikrit. And Pathikrit, the point was that in USAID particularly, it has come under the radar of Donald Trump and particularly Elon Musk under Dodge, where they want to cut the federal funding. They also want to cut the size of staff at the USAID. But also about all this funding that has gone on from USAID to New York Times and Politico and BBC, Reuters, AP, and even one of the foundations, anti-corruption foundations that has its linkages to George Soros, which was also questionable.
No, it is not just New York Times and George Soros. They have been very, very charitable, and they've even funded organizations linked to Falai Insaniat Foundation, which is a front of Lashkar-e-Taiba. You see, they actually believe in taking all along. So they don't even mind funding terror groups. They don't even mind funding such entities which do research on virus and have been responsible possibly for the spread of COVID virus. They have even been so kind to the world that they have a project called Strategic Silence, which is nothing but ensuring that the global media, especially the Western media, maintain silence on certain issues, and they speak in unison. You look at it, the kind of control on the Western media USAID used to have, to the extent that this entity called Reporters Sans Frontiers says that Trump's foreign aid freeze throws journalism around the world into chaos, confusion, and uncertainty. I don't know what kind of journalism RSF, which is Reporters Sans Frontiers, or BBC used to do, that they will be into chaos just because USAID has been dismantled. So that is a very big question mark. In India also, frankly speaking, Megha, what Elon Musk or Donald Trump is doing now is not something which has which people came to know right today. For the last, say, almost a decade, people have been talking about many things. We have seen in India the kind of orchestration of anti-CAA riots was done, the kind of orchestration of anti-farm law protest was done, the kind of anarchy that was attempted to be spread in India, the kind of organizations likes of USAID funds in India, the kind of separatist institute or rather organizations, the kind of NGOs. You tell me, Megha, why was USAID up till 2006 so much interested in collecting data from rural India to understand the demographic profile and reproductive history of women in India? Am I to connect it with Henry Kissinger's approach of weaponizing population control in developing countries like China and India? Because for him, this was a very big threat to the global order, the population growth of China and India. So what all things were they involved in? Even to the extent that Robert Kennedy Jr. mentioned in one of the interviews that in 2014, this entity, which he terms as a front of CIA, had spent $5 billion for a regime change in Ukraine, and Victoria Nuland, even a month before the democratically elected government in Ukraine was ousted, had the list ready for the next cabinet, who all will be the members. And you had an organization called Center for Information Resilience. They had a project called Internet Censorship Project, funded by a person called Nina, run by an organization called Nina Jankovic. She was also funded by USAID. So you see all kinds of, they co-opt the big tech social media giants to ensure that you get a traction of a certain kind of narrative, and you completely censor other kind of narrative. You have banned Russia Today and other channels in Western media, Western world. Why would you fund BBC? What do you get out of it?
Right.
What has a developmental institution
exactly,
to do with funding BBC?
Those are questions. So when you say, can a government influence how a media channel functions or a media agency is dispensing news, is then putting out all those all those numbers into the picture and coming up with an analysis of how things function really. Let's also get in Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor on the telecast with me. Ambassador Kapoor, in a situation where there is an executive order almost every day being passed by Donald Trump, how is the world taking it, and what are the reactions of an average American?
Uh, Thank you, Megha. During the first tenure of President Trump, there was a lot of pushback by the system. So, a lot of his aspirations he was not able to achieve because he started a little late. He was able to do very little, and even in that very little that he tried to do, there was pushback by the deep state, by the entrenched elements. Now, what has happened is a lot of these organizations, which are primarily set up with very noble aims and goals, for example, USAID to foster development in developing countries all over the world and in the least developed countries. Uh, at some stage of their existence, they start meandering and they start losing their way, and they get into sort of a very questionable sort of activities. A lot of CIA moles get embedded as USAID officers, and then they start interfering in local politics and all the local media and the local narrative. Like in India, if USAID is funding human rights events, and these are basically people who are functioning against the democratically elected government, then it's not the right charter, not the right brief, not the space in which the USAID should be working in. Now, ICC also similarly has gone around sanctioning leaders from different countries which are at war currently. But whether it has the mandate, whether it has the capacity to carry out any sentencing that it has done is very, very doubtful and questionable. Now, what has happened currently is that the forces which some of the earlier US governments were fostering and supporting and coexisting with and sponsoring have gone woke in a way, have gone very, very negative to the existence of USA. They have become like breaking USA forces itself. So while they are doing a lot of disruption all over the world, they also started disrupting the entire community as an case in point. And if you take the jihadi element, now for the US to support such elements outside the US, like Bin Laden and others, was another game. But today, the same element, the Islamists, etc., have taken sort of a foothold in the US, and these are breaking US forces. In the universities, we saw the protests, and it is not going to be easy to sort of deal with them, even in the European countries. Now, amongst the breaking US forces, which are very active today, are, for example, the woke element, the leftist entire, organizations. The George Soros, for example, he was very much opposed to Trump becoming the president of US. He had put in a lot of money into the efforts so that he does not become president ever. That he has not succeeded is another matter. The jihadis, as I mentioned earlier, the Chinese, for example, they also are part of that game. But that entire game had taken over the media in the US in a very big way, the mainstream media, the narrative in the US, and it was disrupting other countries. Like I was closely working with Myanmar, and what it one see was that to achieve their nefarious goals and objectives, they were funding the rebels. Even USAID was funding the rebels and training the rebels under the objective of creating democracy to fight against the democratically elected government there. So when you also are interested to break up a country, like parts of Bangladesh, parts of Myanmar, parts of India, they wanted to break up and create a Christian country. So when all these things happen and an organization or some organizations have got disrupted so completely from the inside that to correct the course becomes very difficult. So then the option with you is to completely, close down, shut down shop for that organization and then create something new
Okay.
and which
Okay.
will be better structured.
Okay,
Thank you for
I'm
that.
going to come back to you, Gautam Mukherjee, and let's take a look at term one of Donald Trump. Why weren't such more drastic actions taken by him when his first term? Because USAID continued to function even then. USAID continued to provide funds to BBC and Politico and Reuters and all these news agencies, and also to the Soros Foundation and also to Jaish-e-Mohammed and Lashkar-e-Taiba. Was Trump not privy to all this information already?
In term one, Trump won. He was privy to it, but I think he got a bit hijacked, both in terms of the immediate coterie around him and the what they call the the ecosystem in India. They got the better of him. This time he hit the ground running. He is trying to create a different ecosystem. That means uprooting the whole one. He's firing dozens and dozens of CIA operatives, saying that please resign. If you don't resign, then I will fire you. So that doesn't mean he's eliminating the CIA, but he's going to put his own men in, and the same in the FBI, the same in the intelligence setup, the same in the media. Trump is using Elon Musk to buy up some of the more vitriolic media outlets with a threat to the others that look, clean up your act and try and back government initiatives or else. So he is rewriting the democratic book quite in a way different from what has slowly crept into Western Europe as well as in America as a national security issue. There are many people who got him elected this time who are truly alarmed by the total hijacking of the idea of America. And, this has affected countries like India, who are ostensibly allied to America, but that are more often than not at the receiving end of American hate campaigns, American misinformation, the sort of amplified by Europeans, amplified by, Quisling Indians who are working on their behalf. It is quite a mess, and he wants to disentangle all this and make America less of the ugly American that, was famously written about.
Okay, I'm going to come back to you, Patikrit, in the question. I think it's just a byproduct that Trump has cracked down on these agendas that were being run by USAID, that was being given all sorts of leeways and funds by the Biden administration and the Democrats, as he puts it, to support the left liberal agenda within the country against the Republicans, against him as well during the campaigning period. And it's just a byproduct that it has then ended up opening a Pandora's box, that the Lashkar-e-Taiba and the Jaish-e-Mohammed fronts were also being supported by USAID. And for that matter, the US deep state was integral in completely dismantling the democracy that Bangladesh at one point of time used to be just a few months ago. I don't think Trump has this philanthropic altruistic agenda to support India or Bangladesh or cut down funding for the NGOs that are being run at the behest of the Lashkar-e-Taibas and the Jaish-e-Mohammeds.
No, I beg to differ a bit, because Trump is very clear that American taxpayers' money cannot be used for funding the likes of Lashkar-e-Taiba fronts or do regime change business. I don't know what private foundations like a Ford Foundation would do. I don't think Trump is talking about that. But USAID money is money which is sanctioned by the government of United States, which is typical taxpayers' money. Now, what he is saying is this, that the taxpayers' money cannot be used for regime change. Taxpayers' money cannot be used for spreading of wokeism, radical left ideology, and promoting transgenderism. In United States, not just the rest of the world, they have these elements have harmed the American society as well. They have introduced puberty blockers in
No, of
schools.
course, I'm saying this is his focus is America first, and then everything else is subsidiary. Everything else comes next.
Please understand. No, so Trump is I think Trump is pragmatic. When he imposes tariff of 25%, it is not that he would actually put it. He is using tariff as a negotiating tool. He wants these countries to come to the negotiation table. When it comes to India, let me tell you, Trump is not going to open front against everybody. And Trump knows that Mexico and India are not the same thing when it comes to imposing tariff or doing feds. Second, a very important thing is this: Trump is transactional. We all say that, but Trump also knows that for the transaction to happen, it is not that it is important for America alone to be healthy, but the others also have to be healthy as well. And that is what he is trying to do in terms of cleaning up the mess. He is not doing it for the sake of charity, I agree. But he knows that if USAID keeps on humming, countries like India even, then who would remain to be a strategic partner of United States? There is this person called, Glenn Beck. He says that it is the activities of USAID kind of organization which has ended up making the rest of the world hate America. There are countries in Middle East, most of which have American military base. Most of them have a disdain for United States today because the Americans want them to spend money to buy American weapon systems, and then the very same USAID kind of organization will work with the likes of George Soros to do regime change in Middle East through Arab Spring. So
Okay.
you can't have the cake and eat it too. And that is
Okay.
where I think Trump is transactional. So he knows it is important for the rest to remain healthy as well.
Okay.
Back to you.
Ambassador Kapoor, quickly then before I wrap this up, also interesting, as soon as Trump was sworn in, there have been two interesting things happen which have been to the benefit of India. Number one, it's very big in symbolism that Tahawur Rana has been extradited, the orchestrator of the 2026-11 attacks in India in 2008. Number two, what happened was that there has been a lawsuit that has been filed against the owner of Hindenburg, the same Hindenburg that did a hit job on the Adani group of companies. What is the message that is being sent out by the Republican government to India?
Thank you, Megha. The point is that Trump would keep on doing things which are in the interest of US. Now, supporting India and getting a greater sync with India and greater synergies with India is in US interest. Because the Indian diaspora here in the US, for example, is one of the diasporas which is contributing extremely significantly to the growth of US, to the development of US, to the economy of US, to the job creation, to academic excellence, to overall technology, to overall innovation, to overall startups, to entrepreneurship, in payment of taxes, and sort of not doing anything which is against the law, and being fully compliant, and not doing anything which will take them to jails. It's the smallest community in that regard, but the biggest community in terms of family values, education, and the positives. So if he has the interest of US at heart, automatically it would mean that he would foster stronger relationship with India. It is fortunate that the Prime Minister of India is coming next week. He has done that a lot with the foundational agreements which were signed during his Trump version 1.0. Now, Trump version 2.0, we have already seen that the External Affairs Minister was given the prime seat during his inauguration. The Quad meeting was held during the inauguration itself. So a lot of steps have already been taken, and as you said, he has hit the ground running, and his focus is very clear. He has called, for a meeting with Prime Minister Modi in Washington in the next few days after Netanyahu has come into the US. So it's going to be a significant movement on the US part to again, get into. I remember during his first version, Trump 1.0 version, the joint initiative, the joint statement which was signed between India and the US was so significant. It had 58 paras, which I've rarely ever seen in a joint statement between two countries. So this time, I think it's only going to be even bigger, even better, even with greater depth, even with greater intensity. The ICET, for example, the Initiative for Critical and Emerging Technologies, that will also take off. So the negatives which were there, which were being fostered by the deep state, by the elements in the State Department, and by the others, George Soros, and even like, for example, while the Democrats also, on the one hand, were trying to do a lot of positive work with India, but they could not control the elements which were working against Indian government or Indian system or Indian democracy. And that was, even though it was harming the US interests in a very significant way. We saw that in Bangladesh, we saw that in Myanmar, where they
Yeah.
were trying to break up the
Yes.
country of Myanmar into many smaller countries. So all that will now, a lot of that, not all of that, it's going to be impossible to control all of it, but a lot of it will be brought under control. The
Okay.
positive will get a major space.
Okay, all
and that
right.
will be in the
Okay,
benefit
fair
of both
enough.
the
Yeah,
countries.
you
Thank
mentioned
you,
those
Megha.
points as well. All right, I'm out of time, but I thank all of you for joining me on the telecast and sharing your views on this very important development coming in from America, from the Trump administration side. I'll take a short break. Thanks for watching NewsX.